I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Board of Education and Public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is no public participation in this work session. Please all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Chambers, roll call.
Mr. Nichols.
Here.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Here.
Ms. Smoyer.
Here.
Mr. West.
Here.
Ms. Pritchard.
Here.
Thank you.
Would entertain a motion from someone to allow public comment at this board meeting.
I would like to entertain a motion for public comment at the meeting.
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion?
I want to mention that typically we do not have public comment at a work session. I love the big crowd that's here. We typically, per board policy, only allow public comment during regular scheduled meetings where we are going to have board action. There is no board action planned to be taken for this evening, so that's why there would typically not be public comment. I would encourage the board to continue with following our policy. We have 4 things that we do as a board. We hire the treasurer, we hire the superintendent, we make policy, and we serve as a conduit to the public. Conduit meaning both ways. We listen to our community and we share information from the community with our district administration and vice versa. Public comment is always welcome. I always encourage everyone to come to public comment. I'm fearful that if we amend our policy for this, it's a slippery slope we're going down, and I really think we need to follow our policy. There are many alternatives for us to have dialogue and communication with the community. Our email addresses and our phone numbers are on the website. I know several of you that are out there. I would just encourage us to have dialogue and communication in that format. Thank you.
Any other comment?
I love that everybody is here, and I have a feeling a few of them want to talk or give their ideas on what we're talking about with the levy. I have talked to some on the outside, via either email or phone call, but I think they want to possibly address all of us at one setting, and with public comment, there is no response, but it would be nice to listen to what their comments are, because that is something that we're going to use as a determining factor. This is a work session, yes, and this will give us something to think about as well if they have other ideas.
Anyone else? This, I believe, will just be a one-time public comment at a work session, because this is vital to the school district.
I agree.
Okay. Okay, no other discussion? Okay, Mr. Chambers?
Yes, Ms. Smoyer.
Aye.
Mr. West.
Yes.
Mr. Nichols.
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst.
No.
And Ms. Pritchard.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Okay, Mr. Sable?
Great. Good evening, everybody. We've got a slideshow with quite a bit of information that we want to share with the board this evening, relevant to not only the potential of an upcoming levy on the November ballot, but we also want to share and discuss a little bit about our recent history in the district, both from a financial as well as an academic perspective, to give a clearer understanding of our current situation, why we are where we're at. In addition to that, we also want to spend some time discussing various options for upcoming ballot issues, address pay to participate, potential increases in fees, as well as share more background on our athletic programming, their impact on students in the classroom, as well as the financial impacts on the district and how those programs are funded. Tonight's presentation, the purpose is to better inform not only our board, but also our community, based off of feedback that we've received, not only since the last board meeting, but really over the past month or so, since the failure of our previous levy, and making sure that we have clear communication. So a recent history of our finances, and I'm going to go back to 2013, because 2013 is the last time that the district received additional monies. And it was a 5.9 mil, 5-year emergency levy that brought new money to the district. Back prior to 2013, the district had gone through a very difficult and challenging financial period of time, actually very similar to what we're facing right now as a school district. Prior to 2013, massive cuts to student programming were implemented, as well as high pay-to-participate fees and the elimination of all kinds of student programming, including busing. Ultimately, the 5.9 mil 5-year emergency levy was passed, which brought relief to the school district. And the major thing that really returned following the passage of that levy was busing. Then in 2018, a substitute levy was put on the ballot and it was passed. And I think this has been an area of some confusion from what I've seen in talking to individuals. I know I've repeatedly have said that we haven't asked for new funds or received new funds since 2013. And what I mean by that is we haven't received additional funding beyond what we were already receiving. So the passage of the 2018 substitute levy was really a renewal of the 5.9 mil emergency levy. So the passage of that levy didn't bring in any additional dollars to the district. It continued to bring in the same amount of money that was being generated by that original 5.9 mil levy, which by 2018 was actually less than 5.9 mils because of the growth that had occurred in the community, as well as any increases in property values and things like that that had occurred. So it did not cause any kind of a tax increase to our taxpayers or to our community. And if I recollect correctly, I'm looking at Dave, I think there was actually a slight decrease at that time because we had a small bond issue that happened to come off the ballot when that 2018 substitute levy actually went up. So in 2016, with the passage of that 5.9 mil emergency, we did a strategic plan, a new strategic plan for the district. This was a collaborative effort between the administration, our staff, our students were engaged, our community was engaged. We had a fairly drawn out process purposely because we wanted to ensure that there were multiple opportunities for people to be engaged in the development of that 5-year strategic plan. So it occurred over a several-month period of time with large group meetings as well as smaller committee groups to discuss, coordinate, and develop what was wanted for Medina City Schools by our entire community. In addition to that, we also had surveys that were given across the community to gain feedback as well. In developing that 5-year plan, what was very important to us and the feedback that we got is that we developed a strategic plan that was actually going to be an actively used plan. That there was concern that sometimes these strategic plans were put into place and then they went on the shelf. So we developed what are called SMART actionable goals that are measurable and held the district accountable in achieving all of these goals that were developed within that 2016 strategic plan. We were in a position with the passage of that 5.9 mil levy in 2018, and then the substitute levy, in 2013, and then the substitute levy in 2018, where we were able to move forward with our budgeting and with the initiatives within the strategic plan and to be able to fund that without going back out to the community and ask for additional dollars, which was important to us because when the levy had passed in 2013, there was a promise that was made at that time by prior administration as well as a prior board of education that the district wouldn't come out and ask for additional money until the district absolutely needed additional money. And that's something that we have stayed committed to for the past 11 years. And it's the reason why we waited until we did to go out to the community and put an issue on the ballot. Because we waited till we really needed it instead of going a year earlier. So we've talked about this quite a bit over the course of the past year, but that 2016 strategic plan was really big for the school district in terms of expanding opportunities for our students. Tuition-free all-day kindergarten was one of the biggest things I remember people talking about in terms of being important to the school district. And not only hearing that from parents and the community, but also hearing that from our staff because of the academic importance of preparing our students for especially not only social skills, but also their reading, writing, and math skills, which they do start in kindergarten. Also, the expansion of gifted programming, increasing electives at our middle and high school, the electives, increase of our foreign language programming across the grade levels, AP programming, college and career readiness programming, really pretty big opportunities for our students. I think maybe some of the most important things that we have done is the college and career, and I emphasize career readiness because we really are in a very different climate than we were just 10 years ago. I just saw a story on the news a couple days ago how enrollment is decreasing at colleges and universities are looking at layoffs. And it's because, and I'm speaking my opinion, that college degree doesn't necessarily mean what it once meant, which means that we need to prepare our children differently at the local level. So those are the transitions that we've worked on making as part of that 2016 plan. And I'm proud of our community and our staff because I think we were ahead of the game with that we were talking about that at that time when the bulk of that conversation actually started coming later, more towards the 2020s. The other piece was the reintroduction of teaming to the middle schools. We've talked about teaming a lot. I know it doesn't necessarily impact everybody, or not everybody knows what it is unless you've recently gone through the middle schools. But teaming is a structure that provides more mental health and academic supports for students at the middle school level, which is Definitely a difficult time for students. It's transitionary years, not only going from elementary to high school, but it's also a lot of mental and physical changes that are going on with children during that age group. So it allows teachers to work with students in smaller groups where they really get to know their students and their needs, and the teachers literally work together in teams to address the needs of their students. Also adding maker spaces across the district. They're in every single one of our buildings. That's been a big transition in terms of not only the way our students learn, but the access to resources and tools that they have for learning, not only in the classroom with instruction, but also outside of the classroom as well. Students coming down and going to the maker spaces when they might be in a study hall and doing exploratory learning on their own is extremely important. And I don't think we have a board meeting where there's not donations on the board agenda for our maker spaces somewhere in our district. So that's something that I think has been an important piece and contribution from our community as well. Extracurricular opportunities as well, expanding them at the elementary levels. Robotics and really a focus on STEM. We added STEM supplemental contracts so that we can have more exposure to our students outside of the school day to things like robotics, which is a specific one, but math and sciences, again, to extend outside of the actual classroom. One-to-one technology for all students. We were not one-to-one back in 2016. The pandemic, we actually had a plan to phase it in, I think, over 2 or 3 years, and the pandemic decided it was going to happen in one. But we made it work. You know, the bright side to that, the cup half full, is we were able to receive ESSER federal funding dollars, which helped us to pay for the implementation of that one-to-one programming, which we otherwise wouldn't have had, and that would have had to come out of general funds. But again, it's a way for us to try and stretch our funding and responsibly use our resources. Mental health services as well, preschool through 12. We've had an expansion of our guidance counselors across the district. Not only that, but you look at actual mental health providers and counselors. Ron Blue is an example that plays an extremely important role at our high school. Those are positions that used to be grant funded in the county that no longer receive grant funding. I think that grant funding ended somewhere right around 2018. And we made a decision as a district that the mental health supports for our school district and our children were really important, and that we chose to take on those expenses as a school district to keep those positions in place. And to this day, I think that's one of the best decisions we made, because as we all know, the pandemic followed not too far after that. And we already had people in place who knew our students, who knew our staff, to be able to come and work with everybody. And then increased building safety and security throughout the district, preschool through 12. And I can't necessarily get into specifics about all of this, but just to name a few things, upgrades or implementations with things like camera systems, having systems in place where our local police officers have access to our cameras from their police cars in case of an emergency. Things like adding man traps or corridors to buildings where and when possible, so that there's multiple entries people have to go through in order to get into a building. SRO officers, yes, that's definitely important. We've expanded our SOR officers throughout the district, and we also put in place somebody to oversee security for the district as well, who has played a vital role in overall district security and safety. Thank you, Dave. So a portrait and new strategic plan are born. Our original strategic plan that we put in place was a 5-year plan that implemented the programming that I just discussed. We felt like we really had come a long way as a school district and made great progress. I know one of the things that I was charged with when I was hired 8 years ago was that Medina should be a beacon in the state in terms of what we're offering and the kind of academics that we are giving to our students. We worked in that first strategic plan to put that type of programming in place. Our next stage, our second strategic plan, as well as the implementation of our Portrait of a Graduate, really didn't bring new programs. It was initiative to support all those programs that we had worked on putting in place with that 2016 plan. So it was developed through the collaboration of a committee of about 85 individuals. Similar breakdown is what we had for the previous strategic plan, where it consisted of staff members, administrators, community members, business leaders. We also included surveys within that process. And the Portrait of a Graduate was really geared towards looking at the characteristics and qualities that we expect in our students in this community when they graduate. A major thing that I've heard, and I think we hear really across the country, when I go to county and local business meetings, is we talk about traits that companies need in students. And most of them that I talk to will say, we can teach incoming people the skills. We need them to have the soft skills to be able to work with individuals, to be flexible, to be able to make decisions with others. And those are the kinds of things that we need to better implement into our programming within the schools. And that's the overall purpose of the Portrait of a Bee. The new strategic plan and the Portrait of a Bee go hand in hand in supporting each other, with the Portrait of a Bee really being the district's North Star. And now I'm going to turn things over to Tina. She's going to talk a little bit more about our academics, where we're at, and also about what success we've seen with our student achievement with these programs and these initiatives that we've implemented over the last 8 to 10 years.
Thank you. Like Aaron said, this really did become our North Star. It became the center of what we worked on as a district, and our teachers and administrators worked so hard, and we've come so far. Right after we got our Portrait of a Bee, we started to think, what does this look like in the classroom? We wanted to make sure that the competencies that we were working on with kids wasn't just a collaborator day or respectful citizen day. We wanted to make sure that those things were embedded in instruction. And so if you look at our swish, and I know it's hard to see, our competencies along with our rigorous content equals deeper learning. So we're not just teaching content, we're not just teaching the competencies, we're teaching those together. We're providing students experiences where they can learn those things together, and that's what we're calling our deeper learning initiative. And that's been really, really exciting to see. For the first time this year, we had our Portrait to Practice Expo open to our community. The next slide, thank you. And that was such a big success. We had so many teachers come out and share the great learning going on in the classroom. We had students there who were demonstrating their learning and showing their leadership in their learning. It was, we had so many people there. I know a lot of you guys were there, so you saw it, but it really was a great example of how we put our portrait into practice in the classroom, and that's why we called it Portrait to Practice. learning this way isn't all about test scores. It is about how students are mastering the Portrait of a Bee competencies. And we are starting to work on how we can assess the way students are mastering those competencies through our capstone experiences. But on the upside, as we are doing that, we are seeing great things with our rigorous content as well. For example, our state report card this year, we received a 4.5 stars, which means that we are exceeding state standards. And if you look at the breakdown of all the components that are measured in our report card, you can see in most cases we are exceeding or significantly exceeding state standards. So that's really an exciting example of what this work is helping us accomplish. In addition, I have here an example of our performance index, and the performance index measures how well our students do on tests, so not just whether they're proficient or not, but it measures if they received an advanced score or an accelerated score or a basic score or a limited score. And the higher the student's score on the test, the more performance index points a district receives. So if you look from 2019, which was obviously pre-pandemic, to last year's report card, 2023, you can see that we basically have gained the losses that we saw over the pandemic. You'll notice a big dip in 2020, and that wasn't just us. That was obviously across the state and across the nation. If you look at the chart to the right, that's Ohio's performance index. And you'll see again a big dip in, actually they didn't post their 2020 scores, they only posted 2021, but you can see there still was a dip in 2021, but they still haven't reached their pre-pandemic, as a state, districts haven't reached that pre-pandemic level. So our district is growing at a higher rate, which is exciting. And then we have some really big news, and this is hot off the press because we just found out this week, I believe, that our high school was ranked by U.S. News and World Report number 68 in Ohio, number 19 in the Cleveland metro area, and number 2 in Medina County. And if you look at the chart on the right, our past rankings, in 2021 when we started this work, our ranking was 129 out of the 941 high schools in Ohio. So in just 3 years, we are 68 out of 941. And I did list the ranking factors there for you so that you could see how that is developed, but we were very pleased with that, and a lot of kudos goes to Elisa and all the great teachers at Medina High School for helping to make that happen.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that there really has been a large amount of focus with our administration and our teachers at the high school with the implementation of the deeper learning initiatives, and really proud to see this come out. I mean, that kind of a jump from 121 to 68 was unexpected and a happy surprise. So the next thing we want to talk about is what we've seen over the course of the past several months. November 23, we made the decision to go ahead and put an operating levy on the ballot. And as I had previously mentioned, we could have decided to put this levy up a year earlier and given ourselves a cushion for the potential of failures to be able to put levies back up on the ballot again. We chose not to do that because of the commitment that had been previously made, and we felt like was an important commitment to our community to not come out and ask for new money from the community until we needed it. And it's part of our philosophy in really being open with where we are at financially and trying to build trust. Unfortunately, the failure of the November 23 levy resulted in immediate reductions. It placed us as a district in precaution status by the Department of Education Workforce. It's because without new money being generated, we were showing that we were going into the red in year 3 of the 5-year forecast, which initiated us to go into that status with the state and forced us to have to put $10 million in reductions together, starting with $2 million going into next school year as part of that precaution plan. Big reason why this happened is because this was the last opportunity to pass a levy in that calendar year. Our next opportunity wouldn't be until the spring, which would be the next calendar year, which means we would lose a year of collection dollars, which would be a loss of approximately $14 million, which we had to make up. So in March of '24, we went back on the ballot. We had a lot of conversations regarding the amount that we should go on the ballot for. In order to make up some of that $14 million, we really needed at the time to put an $8.5 mil levy on the ballot. We didn't think that was very realistic to go out to our community and ask for that large of a levy. So we made the decision that we were going to implement reductions and go with a 7.5 mil levy, which meant we had made the conscious decision with that 7.5 to have additional $2 million of reductions going into next school year, in addition to those that we already had to make as part of the precaution plan. So that resulted in $4 million in reductions going into next school year. In terms of the 2 phases of reductions and how they impacted the district, the first phase, the $2 million of reductions to the precaution plan, we were able to handle the bulk of those without actually laying anybody off. And we were able to do that because of the redistricting of the elementary buildings and naturally being able to reduce staff with 2 elementary buildings transitioning for other usage. So that precaution reduction didn't have a major impact on, or won't have a major impact on, what's going to be happening with our students next year. Different story for the next $2 million in reductions that we had to make, because as we make more reductions, are finding it much harder to find areas to make reductions that don't impact students. So we still continued with the next $2 million with this philosophy of trying to make reductions that are least impactful on students, but it just wasn't impossible to do it without having any impact at all. So I do anticipate we're going to see things like some classes not being offered next year that we have historically offered the last 8 years. Because we're not going to offer classes with lower class sizes, as well as some larger class sizes at the elementary, middle, and high school buildings as well, because we've reduced 22 teaching positions. It also impacts our administrative support across the district in terms of how we're going to need to handle some special education services with the administrator reductions, as well as how we're going to have oversight within our buildings with administrator principal support. So this graph here demonstrates the situation that we are in. The first is the November forecast, and it shows what our outcomes are if we were to make no reductions. So you see there's a big decrease. Those bars are all dropping. They're going negative. We would immediately go negative starting next school year. We go into the precaution plan. So the implementation of the $2 million in reductions, it provides us a little bit, a sliver of a cushion, but beyond that, again, they're deep dives. And then we go into the additional $2 million in reductions, and we're in a position where we're going to be okay for next school year. But beyond next school year, we're looking at financial crisis.
Aaron, I can't see, the numbers in red are just hard for me to read. What is, okay, thank you. So even.
At $10 million increments,
Okay, all right, thank you.
negative $10 million increments, 25, 26. Correct. So part of the discussion we had at our last board meeting is an income tax. One of the things that we've heard as well is being creative in ways that we can find to fund the schools. I've said over and over, we really are limited in our options. One of the ones is an income tax. So we've had some discussion about that, especially publicly since our last meeting. Just looking at general advantages and disadvantages. And for me, I think it's hard to have this conversation about advantages and disadvantages because a lot of it depends on what seat you're sitting in. You know, are you still working? Are you not? What's your income? How expensive is your house? Those could all be things that change whether something is an advantage to you personally or a disadvantage. So we tried to be very general in laying these out. So the general advantages and disadvantages, earned income tax doesn't affect retirees. Obviously, our retirees are an extremely important segment of our community and our population, and they're a big support of our school district, and they're a segment of our population that we want to support. And if we could support them in this way, we would definitely want to do that. The other piece is it's not stagnant like a property tax is, so there's the potential as wealth grows in the community that the tax base itself could grow for the school district. The other piece is it puts us on the same side of the issue, taxing issue, as most other commercial and industrial properties are out there, rather than our sole reliance on property taxes. Disadvantages, tax earnings can fluctuate depending on what happens with the economy. Funding doesn't immediately start. We know with a property tax that we'll start collecting the January following the passage of that tax. It doesn't work the same way for an income tax. It ramps up over time, so that impacts the amount you'd have to ask for. It also puts us in competition with the city because the city is reliant on income taxes for their funding. Also, we mentioned last time that it can be more impactful on lower social economic families. Another piece of feedback that I heard from several people over the course of the past month or so is even looking at individual households, where households currently have one property tax to support the schools, could be in a situation where there's multiple people in the household who bring an income that are now being taxed. The mom, the dad, and even the children, if they have jobs. Also, it's something that some districts have seen success with, but it's not well known. There aren't a lot of districts that actually have income taxes in place. The other piece is an income tax is on people's paycheck every time they get paid. So you're constantly reminded of where your money's going, which can be frustrating, especially when times can be difficult. And then we did look back at our history, and we did attempt an income tax back in 2011. And at that time, it was not a very popular result. Next, I'm going to talk about different operating levy options. Last meeting, we really seemed to center around a 7.5 mil levy in November. The reason why we did is because that's the amount of money that we need in order to continue supporting programming without instituting major cuts. There's been a lot of questions about why 7.5 and why we're talking about 7.5, so it's important that we share other options and have those conversations as well. So the first one is a 6.5 mil operating levy. It would generate 12.49 million at a cost of approximately 228 per 100,000 for the property owner. If we went with the 6.5 mil levy, and I've got some graphics I'm going to show you here in a little bit, we would need to make an additional of 13.8, approximately $14 million in reductions over the next 4 years. So 13.8 over the next 4 years, that's approximately the 4%, over the 4% that we just made over the course of the next 4 years, which means next year we would need to make reductions even larger than what we just made this school year. With how we've already surgically made reductions, I don't know how we could make further reductions without eliminating major programs. And it is very likely that the first program that would go would be that middle school teaming, because that reduction would be approximately a $2 million reduction, which would really help get us to that 14 million. But that would just be the start of those reductions.
Aaron, that's 13.8 divided by 4 years.
Correct.
About 3.5.
Mm-hmm. So then we looked at a 7 mil operating levy, and 7 mils would generate about 13.45 million at a cost of 245 per 100,000. And with this, the district would need to make approximately $10.4 million in reductions. Again, same scenario. We're looking at a situation where we would have to make major reductions to programming. It's likely teaming, again, would be the first thing to go, and we'd be looking at other types of major cost-cutting programmings in addition to that in order to make the necessary reductions. Then the 7.5, which is what we've been discussing, if the 7.5 mil levy were to pass, we would be in the same situation that we were in had it passed this past spring, because it's within the same calendar year. So we're not looking at that loss of collection dollars. It would generate approximately $14.41 million at a cost of $263 per 100,000. Even with the 7.5 mil levy, we still need to make another $7.2 million in reductions over the next 4 years. So even with the 7.5, we're looking at additional reductions. The difference is it's not the same scope of reductions. The 7.5 allows us to retain the major programming and continue to look at more strategic and surgical ways to make those reductions. And what I mean by that, we have whittled away and there's not much wood left to whittle. What we would need to do is we would look at our hiring process, and as we're bringing new employees in, We would need to really take a focus and a hard look at years of experience, where individuals would land on the pay scale, and make some of those decisions on the long-term financial impact on who we're bringing into our district. And I'm actually going to stand up for this one. So this graph here, and I think this is a really telling graph. This is a breakdown of the 3 levies in our financial situation if they were to pass. All of these lines include the $4 million in reductions that are going into place next year. Every one of these includes the $4 million in reductions. This blue line is if we were to fail a levy in November. So it's just crash and burn. That's our reality if we don't have a levy in November. This dotted line here, 3 months of district operations. Ever since I've been in the district, and I think it's good practice that school districts keep a certain balance that covers district operations, which means not only being able to pay employees, but also to pay educational services that are supplied to the district. And that figure that we've historically discussed with the board is approximately $23 million, which would keep the district operating for 3 months. Remember, as a district, to get perspective, we are looking at a district budget that's somewhere around $100 million a year. So we are a large operation in terms of a business perspective. So the red line is a 6.5 mil levy if it were to pass. And you can see that with the $8 million in reductions, the red line never goes up. It levels out a little bit, but it just continues to drop down and provides the district with little to no relief at all. If we look at the 7.5 and 6.5, they all show an upward trend to provide the district with some stability with the increasing finances. But again, it's short-term stability, and they eventually start going down as well and heading into that reserve. And the speed with which they go down impacts when you have to go back on the ballot and what you have to go back on the ballot for. So when we're deciding how much of a levy to put up and how much money to ask the community for, it's not just a decision for right now, it's long-term as well, and long-term financial planning, not only for the district finances, but also the long-term financial asks that we would have of our community. And the reason why I say that is because if we go with a 6.5 as our decision, we are within a year going to have to go right back on the ballot. So if we pass a 6.5 within a year, we're going to have to go back on the ballot for, and I'm just spitballing, but it's going to be a larger millage amount. If we go a 6.5, we might go out another year. We'll have to go back on the ballot again. Maybe we can go with a little bit less of a millage because we're ahead of the game a little bit, if that makes sense to everyone. And then the same thing with the 7.5. With the reductions that I presented for the different levy options, what those reductions would do, and they are not in here, we just have the 8, all of those would help the 7.5 million, the 14 million, they would all help pull up these lines to stabilize our forecast. And that's why those reductions with those levies is necessary.
So that graph does not show like
I'm sorry. So that graph doesn't show like on the 7.5 of, with an additional 7.2 reductions?
It does not.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing that I think is important to note too is the relation of the different millages, cost per 100,000. The adjustment in the millage amount to the district is not proportionate to the adjustment amount to the taxpayer. And what I mean by that is the district loses a lot more collection dollars than the increase to the taxpayers. So for instance, a 6.5 is 228 per 100, and the district would collect about 12.49 million. A 7.0 is 245, which is $18 more per 100, but the district collects another $1 million a year. And then you go to a 7.5, and it's compared to a 6.5, it's a $35 difference per 100,000, but to the district, it's almost a $2 million difference per year. So it's more of a significant impact to the district. And this is what I was saying before, with a lower millage, the district would have to go back on the ballot sooner and for more money. So next, I want to get into athletics, and we've got our athletic directors and our high school principal here. They're going to talk a little bit about athletics. So Lisa, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. So extracurriculars is a huge part of our school community, and it provides a purpose for our students that exceed beyond the classroom walls. As you guys drive through the square and throughout our community, I think you will see the oval M pretty much everywhere, which is a huge testament to our extracurriculars, our schools, our athletic programs as a whole. Somehow, this district has figured out the secret of making a large district feel small. Again, a huge testament to our athletic department, our extracurriculars, our individual school buildings. Our athletic department prides itself on the success of our student athletes. I commend our athletic directors for creating a culture of champions, not only on the field or on the court, but also in the classroom. As you can see by the data presented here, physically active students, which can be sports, it can be our marching band, it can be students in our musicals, have higher test scores and GPAs. They are more likely to attend college. These same students are less likely to engage in high-risk behaviors and have a higher sense of initiative. They also have stronger relationships with peers, adults, higher self-esteem, and are more invested in our community. To give you just a few examples that have taken place just over the past 2 weeks, we've had 3 students that actually today pledged their service to the military in some capacity. All 3 of them were involved in athletics in some capacity throughout their time with Medina City Schools. 2 students were just recognized for their efforts with drug prevention and making healthy choices. Again, 2 students were athletes. In addition, involved in our extracurricular activities in the music and arts department. Students that you will see in just a few short weeks as they represent our class as commencement speakers. Both of them are student athletes. One of which involved in our speech and debate program, which is amazing. Students that you see in our student council, a huge club organization that is a body of students voted on by their peers. Majority of them are involved in athletics. All of them are involved in some level of extracurricular activities. Needless to say, our student athletes, our students that are involved in extracurricular activities, embody what it means to be a Medina Bee. I fully am confident that they will have all of our Portrait of a Bee competencies when they walk across that stage in a few short weeks, which is why our athletics, which is why our extracurricular activities matter to us. They matter to our community. They matter to me as the high school principal, and I'm sure that they would matter to every single one of our staff members within Medina City Schools. So we felt it was important to come and speak with everyone here today. I'm going to turn it over.
Thanks, Elisa. Thank you for inviting us here tonight to be here. We're always more than happy to come and share information and entertain any questions that you may have. I want to commend Dr. Tadona and the staff here at Medina High School and the administration. That ranking that we saw on an earlier slide, amazing. And again, it's all part of what we should be proud of here, and couldn't be more proud of what we do at Medina High School as well as our other buildings. And it takes a village, and as Dr. Tadona said, it is a big place, but we make it feel small here. And it takes a village to do things, as we always say, and couldn't be more proud of our athletes, our coaches, I was listing, our community, our sponsors, our game workers, our security, our athletic trainers, our teachers, our administration, our boosters and support organizations, our concession workers from student council, our bus drivers, our youth programs, our families, our swarm, our Medina TV, our band members, our volunteers from public address announcers to our chain crew, custodial staff, grounds crew, the maintenance, our technology department, national anthem, like our honor guards and the people who sing. That's all what makes up our athletic department. It's not just a few people in an office. And it takes a village, and a pretty big village, to do what we do well here with a culture of champions. In this, it's always been my philosophy, academics, arts, and athletics are what make up a school district. And academics, number one, always foremost up front. But those other two, the arts and athletics, are important key factors that impact our students. And they are student athletes, they are student performers. First and foremost, they're students, but they do other things than just sit in a classroom, learn a lesson. There's more to what we do here at Medina. And to do what we do here in athletics, it also takes money. So I do want to share, because I want to make sure we have the information based on revenue as well as our expenditures, because I think there's some clarity that needs to be done. And our athletic budget on an annual basis that we work in cooperation with our Treasury Department, Mr. Chambers, and we appreciate all they do for us. The main thing that pays for what we do in our athletic budget is ticket revenue. Our ticket revenue is what is going to be able to support and supply what our student athletes need in our programs. And I'm not talking about our transportation and coaching the coaching supplementals. That is separate. That is in the general fund. This is literally the athletic budget that we work with in our department. Ticket revenue is the biggest. And it's probably the most volatile, because we can't tell you what we're going to make on a yearly basis with ticket revenue. Friday night in October, I have no clue what the weather's going to look like. I have no clue what the record of the other team is going to look like. I don't know what team we're going to have. It's usually a pretty good one, though. Okay? Soccer, basketball, all those sports that we charge admission for, that is our biggest revenue provider for our department. On top of that, we do have entry fees for hosting events. We host some pretty darn good events here that people love to come to. For instance, in golf, we host the Walker Jones here. Okay, that's a boys golf tournament that is hosted in the fall, and I appreciate Jean and her help with that, as well as the Ladies Bees Invitational. We also have the MIT that we host with wrestling in the winter. That's another huge revenue builder for us. The Cross Country Festival that we host, that brings in dozens and dozens of teams here to Medina, both middle school and high school. Track and field, we host the Tom Fasco Relays. We host the Last Chance Meet that will be this Friday that brings schools in. We do charge entry fees for that to pay for some things that I'll explain when we talk about expenditures. But again, entry fees is another way we take in revenue. Our summer youth camps, which is huge, because our feeder programs in our youth are the bloodline of what we do here at the high school and why we are so successful with our programs. Our summer youth camps do bring in revenue to the department. What we do with our summer youth camps is each team or program that does the summer youth camp, that is money that we kind of earmark for them to be able to use for what they need. Okay, that's what we feel, and it's been done to make sure that each program is putting the time in for that, but also getting something back for that. Marketing and sponsorships, we don't do a lot of that. We are so fortunate to have the athletic boosters in this community, in this district. But we do have a couple sponsorships and marketing. Some examples would be for the MIT. North Gateway Tire is a longtime sponsor for the MIT. They provide us some money. As well as some other ones that are side sponsorships, such as you'll see some banners we put up this year for Cleveland State. Ashland has put some up for us. Again, a nominal fee just to put up some banners and things, but that does produce revenue. And then OHSAA travel fee reimbursements. I call them reimbursements. It's funny, the travel fee, OHSAA gives us money for certain team sports to travel, but they don't give us travel fees for some of the sports that do go to state. We do get travel money back for soccer, basketball, football, some of the team sports, but they do not provide us back reimbursements for some of the individual sports like golf, track and field, sports that we have some amazing competitors that go down to the state tournament. So that's our basic budget revenue producers. The next slide is our expenditures and athletic budget expenses. And again, ticket and admissions are our biggest revenue, and we tried to list these in the most for expenditures. Number one for us is our officials. You can't have a game without officials. You can't. And there is a supply and demand issue going on in the state of Ohio as well as this country with officials for more reasons that I'm not going to get into at this table. But we are going to see costs of, for instance, this year, at the end of this fiscal year, we will have spent $75,000 to $80,000 on officials for all of our games, both middle school and high school. Okay, to put it in perspective, but that's one of our biggest expenditures in our budget. Game workers, our game workers, we can't have a game without game workers, and those are the wonderful ladies who are taking the money when you come in, and they have one of the toughest jobs there is because they're taking money from both happy and irate fans for different reasons, but they are great. They put a smile on their face, and again, they're out there tonight working at our lacrosse game, doing a great job for us. Game workers also include people who run the scoreboard. They're people who are going to do stats for us in different ways. So again, we can't do things without our game workers. Event security, again, I was looking at the cost of our security this year, and again, we have to have our security at many of our events for precautionary reasons mostly. But our event security, that is at a close to $20,000 expense on a yearly basis. And those costs keep going up. Officials costs keep going up. Event security costs keep going up. So again, we make a lot of that off our ticket revenue. Equipment, general supplies, we have to recondition equipment. Our football helmets, our shoulder pads, they have to be reconditioned. We want to make sure we have our kids in the safest equipment that they can have, and there are things that we have to do on an annual basis to make sure that happens. Facility rentals. Why facility rentals? Well, gymnastics, we don't have a facility. Most schools use another facility for their gymnastics. We're fortunate that our ladies that compete in gymnastics can have a meet and or the conference meet here in our high school gym because we have certain apparatus and mechanisms to do so. Most don't. But for practice purposes, they do have to go to a facility. That comes out of our budget. We also have in the spring, as I talked when we came back here, I believe last year, we talked about our facilities and the spring-winter overlap. Our baseball team, our softball teams, lacrosse teams, our rugby teams, our boys volleyball teams, all those teams, including basketball, wrestling, all those other teams there's an overlap. So we have to find places for them to be able to practice, try out, and still be able to compete in basically one gym and sometime in the rec center. That is not easy to do. So sometimes we do have to look at facility rentals for that. Travel and mileage, one of my biggest things, we want to have professional development for our coaches, and we provide that. Hotel for overnight at states, again, we're talking every year Culture of champions. We have student athletes that are going to state and cross country. They stay overnight in a hotel. They go down early and they stay because the competition is the next day. We have wrestlers. The wrestling tournament is a 4-day now adventure down in Ohio State University. They stay down there so they don't have to drive back over 100 miles every day. That is something that, again, those hotel fees. Track and field is going to be really successful, and that's coming up in the next few weeks. They're going to send multiple athletes down to Columbus for that. Again, that's going to come out of the athletic budget to make sure they have an experience and an opportunity to enjoy and something they will remember for the rest of their lives. So that's one thing. Entry fees, as we host, as do other schools, and we go to some pretty darn good events around the state of Ohio. We send our wrestlers to some of the top events, the Maumee Bay Classic, the Josh Hefner. We will send our track and field athletes to the events that our coaches feel will give them the opportunities to be successful. Cross country, all those entry fees, golf, girls golf and boys golf, they are in tons of tournaments. All that comes out of our budget. OHSA dues. We last few years the OHSA has brought forth for schools to pay a certain amount of dues. Awards and certificates we pay when we have the banquets at the end of the seasons. Those awards and certificates come out of the athletic budget. And then basically anything that is not transportation and coaching contracts, I probably should have just went down to that, but anything that is not transportation and coaching contracts is going to be paid for through our budget, except for also some partnerships that we have through the Cleveland Clinic. We do have a great athletic training staff. We have Marianne and Louie. We do not have a cost for the Cleveland Clinic, but in return for basically marketing, and that's all they ask in return for the amazing services that we get on a daily basis. You go to the training room down here at the high school, it's packed on a daily basis, so we can make sure that our student athletes are safe and they're getting back on the playing surface as soon as they can once they're ready to go. Another topic that always comes up in questions I get are the randomized drug testing for our student athletes that was put into policy years back. That is not paid through our budget and or the district. That's paid through the Adam Board grant. So that is not, if anybody's saying, I hear it all the time sometimes, why are we drug testing when we have other things that are needed? It comes from a grant. It's an Adam Board grant. So this district is not paying for that directly. We also have, as I've said before, the athletic boosters. Can't do it without them. And I know we have a couple of them in the audience. The boosters, all those other things that we may need, they help us with, and we are blessed to have them. And concessions is one topic that always comes up. Concessions is run through our boosters. They have a wonderful lady, Autumn Giddens, who runs it, and we have great people who work. Our families, our student council members on Friday nights, and our teams. But concessions is something that runs through boosters, and then they give that money back to our student council for prom and different things. Something that doesn't just go to athletics, it goes to the entire student body. That's amazing. Obtaining sponsorships, the gym, the scoreboards, the football stadium, our soccer stadium, the softball field, all those things, they have helped with our sponsorships, along with gym floors like at Claggett and also here at the high school with remodeling. They help with those sponsorships because we can't do it without those sponsorships. Again, they take care of those costs and get through the donations that they give back to the district. Scholarships, we're about to do scholarship season with Ken Duke Scholarship. They give money back to our student athletes this time of year. Unbelievable. Thousands and thousands of dollars there that they give back. And then donations to the district, the uniforms. Every year they give us a nominal fee of $50,000. Again, that helps our bottom line of our budget to be able to do some of those things that we do when we spend money, like those entry fees. We're able to send our teams to some of the best competitions in the state for them to be successful and represent Medina because of what they're able to provide us through donations. The weight room. You've seen the weight room, unbelievable now. Again, a facility that we can be proud of that our student athletes are going to use on a daily basis, as well as our physical education students. So again, it's not just athletics, it's all of our students being able to do that. The timing system that we use at our track meets and at the cross-country festival, again, we thank boosters for that help. The chairs in the gym, we're going to have, we need those for benches, and also when we host tournaments and things like that. Different equipment, volleyball, hurdles, they help us with that, and then obviously a golf simulator as well. That golf simulator is going to be something crucial for our golf programs as we move forward.
Yeah, at this point, I want to see if there's any questions from our board members or administration for our athletics or Dr. Tadona. As high school administrators, they have lots of events going on, so I want to make sure that they're able to skedaddle on out of here a little bit earlier if possible.
Okay, I have two questions. So the facility rental, do we pay to rent the rec when you were saying that we overlapped?
Not from our budget.
No, we do not. We have a joint operating agreement, and each year we meet with the rec center and we schedule when our usage is going to be for the upcoming year.
Okay. And then the second question I had is, so what, you're showing us what your athletic funds are. What comes from the general fund for athletics?
Yep, and Chris is going to talk about that next.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for the detail on that, though. I really appreciate that. Todd?
What's your your expenses? You listed off some of them. Like you said, your officials are $80K a year. What's your ballpark, your total expenses a year?
Ballpark, our budget looks into the, again,
His total budget's somewhere between 350 to 400,000, depending on the school year and the ticket
needs
sales
and everything, yeah.
Could you explain to the public that when we host Ohio high school events, we are not raking in the money, as people seem to think that we are?
Great question. And so when we host, and we are proud to host, the OHSA actually thinks very highly of us, and they should. Our facilities are top-notch. The staff that we put together to host is top-notch. It's a great experience for Division I schools all the way to Division VII schools. There is a certain amount of a flat fee that we get from, so for instance, boys basketball. When we host a boys basketball home site sectional where our team is playing, we get a flat fee of $700 to pay for our workers, and basically anything to put on that, including security and workers and things like that. So at the end, when I do our financial report, that actually goes into a different fund, an 022 account. If we're lucky to, when I look at the end of our game workers to put it on and put it on correctly, that number varies, but it's probably anywhere from $50. I mean, for a home site sectional. Obviously, to host a football game for a Division V or tournament game, they give us more of a flat fee, probably in the $3,000 range. But it takes more people also to run those things, more security possibly because it's bigger, more ticket takers, more gates. But again, we are not making a whole lot of money. Nothing that's going to. We get a little revenue, but it's not what we're getting like on a Friday night when we host a game on a Friday night, and we're bringing in tens of thousands that again pay for a lot of the other expenditures.
That is a common question I've asked you personally, and I just wanted it to be out in public that it is not a huge moneymaker for us.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Just so I'm not the odd one out, thanks for presenting this, because I mean everybody else, had their questions. So, thank you.
Great. And Mason, Todd, Elisa, thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you for having us.
And Dr. Kwolek is going to talk about the district expenses for athletics and pay to participate fees, as well as music fees.
So I think what Todd shared was some of the expenses, but we want to make sure we wrap up the other ones too, and Mr. O'Cull's going to help me as well. So the other piece of athletics is the cost for facilities maintenance and field maintenance. And so Ryan and I tried to get a snapshot, because it varies, but we wanted to give you a little bit of a snapshot. So facilities maintenance includes things like, we gave some examples that the community's been aware of, but the stands, the track. So I'll let Ryan share a little bit more about facilities maintenance recently and what those costs could be on any given year.
Yeah, this time of year when the grass is jumping out of the ground, we are responsible for the mowing of the fields, not Dukes, of course. We don't mow it very often at all. But we also line all the fields.
We do rake Ken Dukes, though.
We do rake Ken Dukes. We do. It has to be cleaned a couple times a year, and that is a big process as well. It removes all the rubber pellets from the surface and then puts them back down. So it does require some maintenance. But we also fertilize Memorial and line the baseball fields. We do infield work on the baseball fields. So there is a big cost this time of year, especially to the maintenance of the outdoor facilities.
And again, not everything's outdoor, so indoor as well, if things need to be done in terms of basketball courts or other things.
Yeah, we do refinish the basketball courts every year, put down new coating on top of those, so you are correct, there are indoor expenses as well.
So we just wanted to give the community just a sense of what that is. So Ryan pulled just this month's expenses. Again, obviously it's spring, so there's more grass, more other things, but our staff's done about $6,000 worth of field maintenance for this month. So again, just to give people an idea of what the costs are.
Well, and then even looking at the reductions that we are making going into next year with the $4 million in reductions, approximately 22 of those reductions are from support staff. And we rely on our support staff to get that kind of work done. So when I talk about people aren't necessarily directly seeing the impacts, there are going to be definite impacts next year in our staff having to handle and juggle those types of duties.
Yeah, this time of the year, our maintenance department is responsible for most of the mowing. When we get closer to the summer, our bus drivers, we have a lot of bus drivers that pick up those responsibilities for the summer. So this time of year, it's really, really busy for the maintenance department.
And it's not like your grass at home. You can't let it grow. I know the pitch on a soccer field has to be cut a certain number of inches. You can't just say, well, I'm not going to cut the grass this weekend. We'll let it grow. So we do have to have priorities in terms of cutting as well. So again, people have asked, I know, Mr. Sable, in terms of what's the total cost of athletics to the district. So we're trying to provide everyone a full picture. And I tried to put on this slide so when people saw it, the district is paying transportation, co-curricular contracts, facilities, and facilities maintenance. Todd shared with you what the revenue and expenditures he uses in his budget, but then these are the other outstanding costs. So I also wanted to go over pay to participate again because I think there was some confusion, so I want to make sure we clarify. So this slide just shows what the current costs are. So not everyone is paying $330. We have some graduated costs right now. Ninth grade and cheerleading pays different. Middle school pays different. Middle school cheerleading pays different. So I know in the past when we discussed if things were increased, I just want to clarify for everyone, if we talked about in some respects doing something different, it would be graduated as well. We're not looking for an all-around cost because there's differences. For example, cheerleading is different in middle school because they don't go to away games. So I just want to make that clarifying point too. I know we presented this before, but again, the biggest cost to the district is coaching contracts and transportation. So these were the costs that Dave and I had found and presented for last year. So the biggest chunk are going to be the coaching co-curricular contracts and then transportation. So overall, the cost of those to the district is $1.6 million, a little over $1.6 million, and the revenue we receive from pay to participate grades 7 through 12 is $366,164.50. So as I presented to the board, again, I want to clarify, we talked about a 50-50 split as something the board may want to pursue. Again, I know many people looked at other districts around, and absolutely other districts pay to participate are in the $100 range. Some are lower than that, some are a little bit higher. But I was just trying to present to the board what percent we're at right now, and if we're in a position where we need to bring in more revenue, what's a way to do that? So I just want to clarify that as well. I wanted to just present to the board what percent of co-curricular contracts and transportation is the board paying right now, and what percent is pay to participate paying. So that's where we came up with the 77.6% and the 22.4%. So these are the same slides we presented last time as well. So again, how do you decrease those percentages? You increase pay to participate, you reduce your options, so then there's less transportation, or you reduce the number of coaching contracts. And again, as Dr. Tadona shared, none of these are ideal for students or student athletes or ideal for anything we want to have in our district, but when you're in a financial situation, you need to look at the different options. Again, I just shared these. You know, you can either increase decrease expenditures or increase revenue. Those are your choices. So I also want to share the music side too. Again, what I shared before, same thing. These are music co-curriculars and transportation costs, and then the revenue we receive as well. I want to clarify, I think Mr. Sable and I have gotten a lot of questions about how could it be so much lower for music. Just music's biggest bulk of transportation is in the fall during football. The biggest music competition is held here in Medina, so we aren't really transporting the band to large music competitions. But there is also not a lot of music travel going on. If you think about athletics, there's 3 major seasons, there's lots of teams, 7 through 12, so there really is a lot less transportation in the music co-curriculars.
That covers the, was it Encore and those as well, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was music co-curricular 7 through 12, yeah, and Encore does transportation, band, choir, has some competitions they go to as well. So in terms of music, if you look at, again, co-curricular contracts and transportation, this was a 61-39 in terms of percentage splits. And again, the same thing. How do you, if you want to look at that, how do you do that, and what do you look at? Again, I think, as Mr. Sable and I talked, looking at other districts, it's hard to know if they're doing it the same way we are. We just wanted to be transparent about, for our district, pay to participate is meant to cover co-curricular coaching contracts and transportation. And so what percent is that pay to participate paying, and what percentage is the district paying? Anybody have any questions about pay to participate?
Yeah, we're gonna come back to all of that. We are at our last slide. So our overall picture, if we are not to pass a levy in November, we're looking at $8.6 million in additional reductions during the 25, 26, and 26, 27 school year. And that's to keep the school district solvent and afloat. So again, those are larger reductions than what we have made this year going into next year. Those reductions, going back to where we talked about curriculum, where we've now talked about athletics, are going to bring us back to pre-2013 levels in programming. And those opportunities that we talked about for students that we work together to implement through the 2016 strategic plan, and then to support through the following portrait of a B and strategic plan, won't exist anymore because we won't be able to financially support them. What we do intend on doing with this upcoming levy in November is putting together a specific reduction plan which would meet the $8.6 million in reductions and present that to the board prior to the November election. We're in a position now where those reductions would have to go into place So we're going to have a specific plan for the board prior to the actual election. I anticipate that we'll have that for the board towards the end of the summer, towards the very beginning of the next school year. But we tried to give you a picture of the kinds of things that we would have to include in those reductions. What I would like to now is open up the floor to the board and administration for conversation. There's a few things that we need to have conversation about. The first one is a levy on the ballot in November, income tax versus a property tax, and then a property tax amount. And then I think the next thing that we need to discuss is pay to participate fees and the direction we need to go in terms of pay to participate fees moving into next school year. I think it's vitally important, and Joe had mentioned this at our last meeting, that we have a more refined plan and direction heading into next month, so that we can have clear communication to our stakeholders, and so that they know the direction that we're heading as a school district, and we can start clarifying information and dispelling rumors. So let's start with discussion about income tax.
All right. If nobody else is going to jump on, I mean, I think with the income tax, pretty loud and pretty resounding. People that are retired absolutely love it. They think it's one of the best ideas we've had. People that are not retired are, I mean, I'll say it, they're terrified of an income tax, because it's going to be way more than what their house was for a property tax. And some people that I had talked to, like, it would result in them having to consider moving out of the district because it's just such a hard impact. And that's, you know, that's kind of where I stand on the income taxes. I don't think that's something that we can go for. You know, we told the community that we would try and think of different and creative ways to generate revenue to kind of help us maybe around a property tax. But I mean, I think it's pretty clear, like, that the community is not in favor of that at all. So.
I've heard very similar things on the income tax. I know I had a very nice conversation with a nice lady last night, and she was pretty for an income tax, and I can understand why. But on the flip side, most of the people that I know, that I see all the time, are not too happy with that. They understand the need for a levy, you know, a property tax. They understand that, you know, the district our revenue has been flat. Let's just put it that way. And whatnot. And, you know, the people that I know, that my friends and whatnot, that I see on a regular basis, are not in favor of an earned income tax, because they realize that it would be 3 or 4 times what they would have to pay on a property tax. And that's just a fact. Mr. Chambers gave us a number on what was it, $50,000 I asked you about last month or something. And it was, I think, $450 or something like that. Give or, that was on an 875, excuse me. It wasn't on a 1, you know, or whatever. So I understand and I can understand, and I can see where, you know, our retirees and whatnot are coming from, but it's a huge amount. And I didn't realize that it had failed, that we had tried in 2011. I hadn't remembered that, and I was here in the district then, but I didn't realize it failed by almost 20%, 16 to 20%. I didn't realize it was that big. So I'm more for a traditional operating or traditional property tax myself.
I concur. I've heard from a lot of people, and yes, I understand our retirees in the community would appreciate that. I think everyone needs to be reminded, though, there is the homestead exemption, I believe, that goes for some retirees that helps with property tax. Jean's nodding her head no. Dave's nodding his head yes. So maybe we just need to clarify that for some people. But anyways, so what my point is, maybe when I'm done, you guys can talk about that. Thank you, and we can ask for clarification. But my point is, I do think that we need to stick with the property tax. I think we've had an uphill battle trying to just help people understand what that means the last 2 times around, and I think we need to stay the course and keep our message, refine it as we need to, and move in that direction.
I'd like to add, I look forward to the what you had mentioned, Mr. Saber, about having a plan. What would it look like? You know, if we fail in November, what are we looking like? Because that's what I hear over and over again too, is if it fails, what does that look like? People want to know, how does that affect them and their kids? And I can appreciate that, and I can understand their point of view, because if my children were still in the district, I would be asking those same questions. So I think that'll be, to Mrs. Parker's point, I think that'll go a lot to help us make the voters understand where we're coming from and what we're talking about too. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, the income tax, definitely, Mr. Sable put it out there. I shared it on my Facebook page to get feedback from that. And I was kind of blown away, actually, in the aspect of how many people were against it. So there are people, of course, those who are retired and do not have any earned income, that love it, of course. They're not going to have to pay for it. But the majority of the people are still working. And, you know, of course, not everybody votes. And the lady I spoke with last night, you know, she's like, I've always voted. And I know that generation votes. And so that would possibly be a determining factor. But in all honesty, I think you would bring out the people that would be affected most by it, and those are the younger generations. And they would vote no.
Well, and really, you know, this is an investment in our kids. It's an investment in our community.
Well, I'm hearing we're moving on from discussion of an income tax. Is that correct?
Yes, we cannot formally make any decisions since there's no action to be taken.
That's why I said moving on
But
from our
yes,
discussion.
thank you.
Next, I'd like to talk about the comparison of the levy amount options. One thing that I do want to point out for clarification purposes. One of the things I talked about at the end was the almost $9 million in reductions if we don't pass in November, and I think this chart is a good way to explain this, versus 7.1 million trickle reductions, I'm going to call them, with the passages of 7.5. With the 7.1 million in trickle reductions that we would make over a course of a period of years through our hiring practices, and working on areas in HR and payroll. Those reductions would help to pull this green line up like this to try and extend the levy as well as the amount of funding we have for the district. In this scenario, all it's doing is trying to lift this line up. They're immediate, they're not trickle. So it's a fast, immediate reduction, and it's just to get us up, to get us through the next year while we can continue to put levies on the ballot to try and get something passed. So that's the difference between those two. So in terms of the options, in terms of millage amounts, conversation, board administration?
Yeah, this graph does not, with all of the different, the 6.5, the 7, and the 7.5, all of those, we are going to have some additional reductions in there. That's what.
Yes, it's just a matter of what the extent is of the reductions.
Correct. And I understand the graph. The blue, the light blue one doesn't change no matter what. If it doesn't pass, it doesn't change. It
Right.
stays there.
With the blue one, like I was just explaining, we would have to make immediate and large-scale reductions just to lift that line up to get us through the following year.
To the tune of about 8.6 million is, I think, what you said, a little, on one of the last slides, I believe.
Well, 8.6 million is what's projected as a deficit for the 26-27 year. So
Okay.
yes, we would have to, next year, we would have to go ahead and reduce the 8.6 million.
Where I'm going with this is, so these graphs don't show if we pass any one, we pick one and we pass it. It doesn't show what those additional reductions would look like, what that graph would look like.
It does not.
Is that something we can project? I mean, it's all based on the 5-year projection, and that's subject to change depending on changing economic conditions, but is that something we could do?
Yeah, I could actually tell you. What we did with the reductions is our goal is to have the district be in a fiscally stable state. So essentially, all those reductions would develop a similar situation for the district in terms of the financial forecast. That's why they're higher with a lower millage amount. So if you worked those reductions in, you would see a leveling out of all three of the red, yellow, and green lines.
I mean, I think bottom line is, those 3 lines to the right, those are with some sort of levy passing. We're still going to be facing, they're still going down into deficit spending by forcing the district to make some reductions in addition to the levy passage. We can maybe not have to go out to the taxpayers right away or for or a large amount because we're making some reductions, correct? Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct. And in addition to that, it's how much are we willing to reduce in student programming in order to go out to the community with a lower amount. So we could go on the ballot with a 7.5 and we maintain the current program we have in place. Our long-term reductions are still in place. We're still continuing to make adjustments in terms of hiring practices and making reductions as we're moving through the school years. Or we could go with a 6.5, and we know that that's going to mean that there's going to be no teaming after next school year, for sure. As well as some additional reduction. Well, it's going to be teaming. It's going to be, I don't know, we haven't put this specific plan. It's going to be big programming is going to definitely be reduced.
Can we see the chart again that showed how much it is per voter, per millage? Yes, this is the one. Thank you. I appreciate this because it does show us just for $35 more, by going up to the 7.5 millage, we do collect a lot more.
And I do want to point out, because we hear this a lot, that's per 100,000, which is not many of the houses in our community. We do recognize that. But this is the common comparison that's used for public schools.
I guess I was trying to get back on that graph. That's based off the 5-year forecast, correct? The lines don't have those, at the various millages, do not have the reductions that we're talking about in there, if we pass. Because like on a 7.5, we were still talking about 7.2 million in reductions over 4 years.
Correct.
Okay.
Those lines that you're looking at
Yeah.
currently have the precaution reduction plus the additional 2 million in reductions that the school district is already doing.
So I guess my question is let's say we pass the 7.5. Can we, what we're looking at is the slopes of the lines. Can we add those 7.2 million for the next 4 years in there? And that's going to change the way, it's going to move the curve, but what does that look like? That's what I'm asking.
It's going to level out the graph to maintain us around the 30 million we're at right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. That's what we were looking for, is trying to maintain where we're ending this school year in 27, 28.
Yeah.
So what you may see is the drop in the first year here, because we're only collecting half a year's collections. It may rise above the 30 million, but going to be coming down again at the $30 million mark here in 27, 28.
Yeah, I understand. I was just like looking to see if we could add those numbers in so we see what the curve looks like. I know it's going to flatten out, but
yeah, we could do that for the board.
I think that's valuable to the community, because they can look at the graph and they can see. I understand what you're saying, and I can see the numbers, and I can picture what it looks like in my head. A lot of people might not, and I think if they can see it,
What would, if we did that, what would be important to include in the graph, though, is clearly stating 6.5 with 15 million in reductions.
I agree.
Because otherwise, they're not going to look, it's not going to look like a fair comparison otherwise.
No, I agree. I mean, you have to qualify it in the key and say what exactly it is.
There was a chart also that showed that, wasn't there? To show what the cuts, it had the millage, the costs, and also what the cuts were. Wasn't there? Maybe you should just go through them for me. Yes, thank you. Yes, so it's separately, but it shows what the reductions would be, right, for each one. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Right, so the 6.5 is 13.8, the 7 is a 10 mil, and then the 7.5 is 7.2 million in reductions. Thank you.
I have a quick question. I know at one point there was a little bit of conversation on talking about looking into seeing if we could do, I guess, lack of a better term, diet teaming, or a reduced version of teaming. Did we ever see if that was a viable option, how much that would cut, and all that?
And Tina and I actually had some conversation about that this morning. With the level of reductions we would have to make at the 7 mil or the 6.5 mil, we wouldn't be able to do that, because we wouldn't be able to make the level of reductions we would need to, because it's, and I'm going to let you talk about it a little bit more, but it's adjusting some of the length and time in some of the academic areas.
We put into place a period and a half in English and math, so that could be one level of reduction. That's about 12 positions, which I believe would be about $1 million. With teaming, altogether. We think it would be about 8 or so more positions, which would get us more around the $2 million mark.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, just teaming itself is kind of an all or nothing thing, probably with the options that we have in front of us, right?
Because of the level of reductions that need to occur, and we're running out of other areas to reduce.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
All right, I think we need to move forward with the 7.5 mil. That's what we've been asking the community for. That is what would maintain our programming that back in, gosh, took us a long time to get that back when we lost that. We just got it back recently. So, and I've been on the board 8.5 years. So it's been at least that long. So, I really think we need to maintain that. That's what is best for our students, and that's what's best for our students.
I just have one comment. 7.5 probably works, but I talked with Mrs. Drewley on Sunday, and I think one of the things that she's hearing is from the community, we've told you twice we don't want that amount. And I don't know whether or not we're going to go out there and just beat our head against the wall one more time. I'm at the point where any amount of money we would get would be a win over another defeat. But yeah, 7.5, we still have to make more cuts. But I don't know whether or not the community is going to go for that. I mean, she's back there, she can speak to this, but I know that when they talk to people, that's what they say. We've told you no twice. And I don't know whether a lesser amount would pass. I mean, a lot of people are worried about the economy, who's going to win the election and things like that. I mean, food prices are astronomical right now. I just think, it's something that I think we really have to think about before we make the final decision, because we spend a lot of money on the campaign just from our general fund to put it on the ballot, then not to mention what Kids First has to do also. But it's just something to consider that the community has told us no twice for 7.5. And again, a lot of people, if you don't have kids in school, you do not understand teaming, you don't understand this, you don't understand that. So, we have to do something to help them understand how this is advantageous to our students. So those are my comments.
So turnout this last time was 35%. So 35% of the registered voters made the decision, and it was 52 to 48. I think was our margin. So whatever 52% of that 35% is what said no. So that is not a majority of our registered voters here in the school district. So yes, are there people who are always going to support the schools? Yes, and thank you so much for that. There are also people who are always going to vote no, and I don't think we need to bang our heads trying to change their mind. I think we need to go out and reach the other 65% of the population that has not voted. And we need to make sure people know this is an investment in our community. We are making cuts. We're not just standing there with our hand out. We are making efforts. We are making cuts. We're already making $4 million in cuts off the bat that are going to affect our kids. A lot of people in the community probably will not see how it's affecting our kids, that they're going to have larger class sizes, that there's probably going to be some kids at the high school that want to get into some classes, and they're not going to be able to because there's not enough room for them, because there's not enough teachers to teach those classes. So our kids are going to feel it. Our community is going to feel it, even though they may not see it directly. So I just think we need to continue the course and make sure everyone does their job to make sure that everybody they know, they're able to get out there and get them to vote, that our kids that are 18, get them registered, make sure they get out there to vote, and we just need to come at it hard. Many of us sitting in this room remember what it was like in 2011 and 2013, and I was out there banging, knocking on doors, and anybody I could talk to, I talked to about it. And my kids suffered from this, and my kids have graduated from this district, and they didn't even get to reap all the benefits that a lot of other families have. That doesn't make me bitter. I may sound a little bitter, I'm a little angry, I'm a little passionate right now, but it's because I feel bad they didn't have those opportunities. And it upsets me that other students, there's students right now that have such great opportunities, and it breaks my heart that they may not get to experience those things because of the situation that we're in. Not to any of our own doing. If you're upset with to voters who are upset with how the system is, it's not us. Okay, the state makes the rules. So we're trying to do the best that we can with what we've been dealt. Mr. Chambers did not show it today, but at the last special board meeting we had, he showed that in 2011, we received, is that the right year? We received 40% of our money from the state. 40% of our budget was paid by the state. Now it's 28%. So we're trying to make up that difference. Unfortunately, the state of Ohio has put that onus on our taxpayers. They say that we are a wealthy district. Now, I cannot even begin to define what that means for anybody, what wealthy means, but Medina is a wealthy district compared to some of the surrounding districts. And they say because of that the taxpayers are responsible for footing the bill to make that investment in your public schools. That's where we're at. That's the reality. Thank you.
I'd say for me, I understand, like the lady I talked to last night and whatnot. I understand exactly where she's coming from, and I can appreciate it. Let's just put it that way. And but looking at the various mills and how much we're still going to have reductions, no matter what, if we pass any of the three. But for me, a 7.5, we're still looking at roughly a $2 million a year reduction per year for the next 4 years. To me, that compared to the other two makes the most sense. So there's my 2 cents worth.
One other thing I wanted to remind everyone too is Mr. Stables there last meeting, I believe we're the second largest employer in the city. So these reductions, probably people are going to lose their jobs. We are a big employer in the city.
People already have lost their jobs.
Correct, yes, thank you.
We issued notices a week or so ago, unfortunately.
I'd like to add something on that. I would just like to make sure that the public knows that we actually had some of our employees voluntarily retire to save other younger educators' positions, because they could keep teaching and would have been happy to have them, but they chose to retire so that somebody younger could keep teaching. And so that to me goes to a huge level of integrity and character and just pure selflessness for their fellow educators and employees in the district. So I'd like to add that. We talked about it at the last meeting, but I like to keep driving that one home.
In my opinion, the 7.5 mils, we're still going to be making reductions. The people that I've spoken to, whether, this past week especially, that it is big money, but we also, I've been told, okay, we need to make reductions. We're too top heavy. Has been a lot of the comments that I've been hearing. So keep that in mind. But we do still need to make reductions, even if we do pass the 7.5 mil. And just like what Becky said, my youngest is a junior, and we did without when they were in elementary school. Of course, people are like, well, we didn't have that when we were in school. I get that. I do. And my kid didn't have that either, but I guess just like air conditioning. We didn't have air conditioning when we were in school. I know I didn't, or at home for that matter, but they are used to that now. It is also a norm, and also with the state testing, which drives me bananas, because we basically teach to test, and in my opinion, and we need all of these things to get these kids to learn so they can show up and we can be the 63rd, 4th, 8th, what are we, 68 in the,
And keep moving up. We want to keep moving up.
yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah, and we're all used to air conditioning right now. Find me a
I
car
think it's
that
on right now.
doesn't have it. And our teachers do more than teach to test. That's the whole deeper learning initiative.
So I've had conversations across the board. Some people that think the 6.5 is the way to go. Some people that think the 7.5 is still the way to go. I can tell you I've talked with some educators within our school and various others, just trying to gauge what the feel is from people with boots on the ground, right? The administrators are there. As far as us as board members, we come in for the certain events that, we show up for. But if you don't have kids, you don't really see boots on the ground aspect of it. The thing that I think about looking at a 6.5 is it is currently approximately $40. We'll do nice round numbers. $40 less per 100,000 than a 7.5. Now to do, once again, nice round numbers. If you're looking at somebody, for instance, that owns a $400,000 house, right? You are looking at $1,000 essentially for the property tax. Going down to a 6.5, that's going to save maybe $120. Now, every dollar counts. Everybody's pinching a penny. Like Gene said, food is more expensive, gas is more expensive. Just, waking up and breathing every day is a little bit more expensive. I don't know that in that example that I gave, $120 currently is worth dropping down to it. And that brings me back to conversations that I had with educators and people within the system. They they made me think, and I'm sure he'll watch this later. But they made me think of Ron Ross, right? What is right for the kids? Ron used to always say that every time before he voted. Didn't matter if we were voting to buy 2 pencils or if we were voting to, change the way the district functioned. Is it good for the kids, right? And I think that 7.5 is still the best thing that we can do for the kids. I think it's the best thing that we can do for the district. And I know a lot of people won't see it this way, but I think it's the best thing that we can do for the community as a whole. Like we said, the district is the second largest employer in Medina. That affects the community a lot, a huge amount. Look at all the things that we do in partnership with the city, with other clubs and things throughout the community. The school district's there, whether you see it or not. We're there helping out and being a part of all these community activities, right? Look at the rec center. Could the rec center have been done just the city themselves? Could the rec center have been done just the school ourselves? Probably it would have tightened our belt real hard, real quick, right? we are just as influential to our community members' everyday lives as city council, I would say, to some extent. I think the 7.5 still is the way that we go currently. Looking beyond that, that'll be a lot different, a lot harder conversations. But I think to reduce the amount of impact on the district, amount of impact on the community's workforce, 7.5 for me would be still where my brain's at.
Next, I'd like to have some conversation about pay to participate fees. We had presented where they currently are and showed information of what they would look like going back to the 660 figure that they had been back prior to the passage of the 2013 levy, and how much of a split that is in terms of district costs versus putting the burden on parents.
All right, I'll break the ice. My children have gotten out, but I do remember back, to 2009, 2013, when pay to play was a lot. I have talked to a lot of people, and these are families that have kids in the district, and they're okay with speaking, like a 50-50 split, okay, between, like athletics being 660 and the music being, I think that's 150 or whatever we said. They were okay with that. Obviously, nobody wants to do that. And we're not eliminating anything. We're just trying to share the cost and get the district in a much more stable, share that cost and get the district keep the district in a stable financial situation. So I'm okay with the 50-50 split, or roughly whatever it works out to be. That's my opinion. If my kids were still in the high school and in athletics and music programs, then I would be, as a taxpayer, I would be willing to pay that. So that's me.
We talked, I think last time we talked about play to participate as it would be a permanent increase. Is this something that perhaps could just be temporary? That if the levy passed, we could reinstate, maybe not reinstate exactly, but maybe look at something that, I don't know, something?
It could be a temporary increase. The board would have to pass a resolution to increase the fees, and they would have to pass a resolution then to decrease them if there were a change in the district's financial circumstances.
I just wanted to share, Andrew brought up the 2010-2011 school year. That's when pay to participate was 660 and there was no family cap. And that year then pay to participate brought in $628,000. Dave and I pulled the numbers. And athletics supplementals alone, so that doesn't include transportation, was $846,000. So when pay to participate in the 2010-2011 school year was 660 with no family cap, and it's good we have the slide up. So pay to participate brought in 628,000. So just to give some perspective, because I know there's been some concern about participation rates. Would you bring in less? Maybe if you raised it that much, how many kids would play? So I just want to make sure people had a data point. So Dave and I pulled that. So again, 2010-2011 is when it was 660, that 2010-11 school year. No family cap, 660. Pay to participate brought in 628,000.
And that, you said the costs were like 800, so that was almost an 80%.
That was just the co-curricular.
Right.
So it wasn't transportation.
Yeah, so.
How many athletes was that?
I don't have that. I just wanted to give us, sorry. I don't have that. I just wanted to have some sort of data because I thought the 660 might have come up. I can get that.
Right. I mean, I kind of think that's important. I mean, because right now, athletic.
Can we do a real quick, what the total is
I
divided
could
by
do the math.
660?
Well, we
Yeah,
can't
but I
because
can't,
of
but that's not how it works, because there'd be
the
family.
middle
But I
school.
can tell you, we know, when Jeff was here, I mean, I was here too, we had a decreased number of athletes. I mean,
Right.
I can pull all that for you. We're going to
No.
have less kids participate. I mean, we can all tell you that. You increase pay to participate, less kids are going to participate because
I
some
think at
people
that
can't
time,
afford
Chris,
it.
I had 2 kids playing 3 sports, so our house brought in some of that.
Yeah, but you're going to
Thank
have,
you.
I mean, you're going to have less kids participate. It just, you are.
I also know there's some families have told me that because of the family cap, their kids are usually 2-sport athletes, but since that third sport's free, they play because it's free. So it may eliminate some of that.
Sorry, the brain's not firing today. I guess my first question, and I know to try and make it fair at that 50-50 mark, what about, I know like music was close to a 60-40. What about bringing everything in line with a 60-40? I know it's going to be less money, but I mean, it'll increase pay to play some, but maybe not as dangerous.
So you're saying an increase, but not as much of an increase? Yeah. We can definitely explore some different options with that.
Okay. And then I know Becky had mentioned about the families that their kids are 2-sport athletes that, buy 2, get 1 free, right? I mean, I would be interested in seeing, if there is some sort of family cap that we could look into, if it was, the cost of 3 sports, because, I mean, yeah, you're losing money on that by the buy 2, get 1 free type of aspect, but, I mean, families that have, like that guy down there, you have 2 or 3 kids in there and they do multiple sports. I think if we could find some relief somewhere in there, and that's going for 50-50, 60-40, whatever. I'm just spitballing ideas, that's all.
Well, and I wanted to clarify, I think there's a difference between having a family cap versus, you have one
Individual.
child, right, an
Yeah.
individual cap.
No, that's fair. Sorry. What wasn't throwing you under the bus? Yeah.
Thinking. So basically, I know it was huge, like a big, as soon as that came out, as soon as the 50-50 came out, the 660, that was, a lot of people were talking. I think we need to, I do like his idea of making it even, the 60-40, just like, I didn't realize that the music was actually like a 60-40. Very interesting that the athletics is even nicer in that way. That I do like that, but we need to show everybody what that would do to help the general fund, because I don't think a lot of people understood that increasing the pay to play will not just pay for the athletics, but it will help the school in general. Comprendo?
Yeah, I mean, if the district isn't paying the 366, or if that's doubled to the 600, then you're talking 6 additional teachers. Right. What that money is doing, right?
The other thing I saw was several people stating that, well, I paid the 660 way back when, and they didn't seem to be upset about it. That kind of floored me a little bit, but, again, they had to if they wanted their kid to play. So, and they were okay with it at that time.
Buckeye, well, first I want to say Brecksville has a tiered system where the bigger sports pay more money and then the smaller sports pay less. That might be something we could look into instead of a straight 660. And when I was talking to Joe, Buckeye does parents transport their kid back and forth. They have probably 8,000 permission forms that you have to go through to do that, but,
Let me cut you off there real quick. We did have that.
Okay.
I don't know if they still do,
okay.
but we did. I don't
Yeah.
think they still do though.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just
Okay, well, anyways, they
Clear there,
did it
that's
at
all.
one time, and that is something that, that, we could look at. I don't particularly care for it, because I don't really want a bunch of kids in with a parent driving, and if something happens and something happens to the kids. But that's the other thing. I would like to see some kind of a cap. And even if the levy passes, though, we have to go through one full cycle. We just can't reduce it, because otherwise the fall sport people are going to be paying more than the spring sport people, right? Is that how you would understand that?
Well, we would have to have more conversation based off of what I'm hearing here, and we have more time with the pay to participate fees than we do with the actual ballot information, because that's something the board would approve for next year. But I think administratively, we need to work with the athletic department to put together some various scenarios of pay to participate options, including it potentially adjusting with the passage of a levy in November, as well as some different amounts that we can present to the board at our next meeting.
Okay.
Or I'm wondering if maybe, or is this something, we've already made our cuts for next fall. Is this something that, I know you mentioned you're going to have a plan for the board of if the levy fails, this is what's going to happen. Is this something that could be put into that plan? If the levy fails, pay to participate fees would be whatever.
And you're saying and not make any adjustments to pay to participate for next year?
Right, is that an option?
That could be an option, yes.
Okay.
I just want to clarify one thing, because I don't want the community to be confused. I want to make sure Joe and Amy, 60/40 is what music is right now. It's not that, okay, I just want to make sure. It's not that we were recommending, or any of us was recommending, that music be different than athletics. So I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, no, I was just talking about bringing sports in line with the music pay to participate. Yeah,
Exactly
no.
what I was saying.
But thank you for clarifying, because I'm sure I said it all wonky.
I just did back of the scrap paper math, and if athletics was brought in line with music, you're looking at about $590 a kid. That's 40%. So anyways, that was just my back of the scrap paper math, so.
Well, based off of the feedback that I've received tonight, I think administratively, unless there's further feedback from the board, that we need to go back and focus on providing the board more information about a 7.5 mil emergency levy, and more scenarios and options about pay to participate fees, including not increasing next year in a scenario where it would be an increase due to a failure, all the way up to various options on different amounts. I am hearing, and I'm just making sure I'm understanding everybody, I am hearing that some sort of a family cap is something the board would like to see as a consistency across the scenarios. Yeah, and I don't disagree with that, so.
I'd just like to hear more, and I think, I mean, for me, let's just make everything on a level playing field, between music and athletics. I think that's fair, whatever that looks like, so we'll look forward to hearing back from you and your staff, so.
I do want to mention and give Becky some credit on thinking about the, if we were able to postpone those pay to participate fees until, after the fact. Because I know the one thing that I did hear from some people was that are sports parents, it feels like we're picking on them, which, I mean, that's not what we're doing. That's not what we're trying to do. We're really up here trying to make, the hard decisions and find a way to, if nothing else, keep the bare minimum afloat, right? So I think with the plan that you were talking about, possibly putting together and then presenting to us, and if we could fit sports in there, that kind of takes away a little bit of that complaint, because now it's not just sports, it's sports and this and that and those type of things. So just an additional thought that I had.
I would like to see, I know we've talked about having a plan so we can inform our community earlier rather than later, and the school year is approaching, and I know we have certain deadlines we have to meet, correct, for ballot language. I hope that we are able to maybe get something on the agenda for the May meeting to begin the process. That's just my thoughts, just before the end of the school year,
Yeah,
before vacations and everything.
for sure. Yeah, that's where I'm at too. If nothing else, I'll vote for it, and you guys can just all abstain. I got it. So, yeah.
I don't think it works that way.
We need at least 3 people voting.
All right, I'll bring my twins.
I just have one other question. The other co-curriculars, like Student Council, Key Club, National Honor Society, was there any discussion about increasing their participation?
They currently do not have participation fees.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any other comment? Okay. For all those of you that stuck it out, if I would ask Emily Faust to come to the microphone as I read this. Community members wishing to address the board are asked to abide by the following guidelines. Attendees shall register their intention to comment in the public portion of the meeting upon their arrival at the meeting. After those that have registered have spoken, if time allows, the board president will ask for public comment from all other attendees. Please state your name, address, and affiliation. Please keep your comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. Mrs.
Emily Faust, 1294 Freeport Drive. I just wanted to thank you all. I took a lot of notes, so I'll be in contact to have more dialogue as opposed to just stating things. I'm a huge for the kids, pro-levy voter. I always will be, and I remember the struggles to get back to where we are. I want to put in front of you, I don't know, and I thank you for being as transparent as you are. But as you're considering pay to play, I don't know if there's anything on the music side that could also be talked about in terms of increases and contribution. And I do like the sliding scale idea. And I'm with Mrs. Parkhurst with getting out more voters in the fall. So however we need to rally around that. I'm in real estate. I understand exactly how things impact home value. I know exactly what it will do to our community. I've seen it. I don't want to see us continue to go backwards. We've constantly been making progress. That's how we have increased, our presence in the state, and I want to continue to see that. We have to find creative ways around this, and we have to spell it out for the community. So I'm just a huge favor of that, and I do thank you for opening up these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, former board member, Mr. Doug Eastwood.
Thank you all for everything you do. I just wanted to, I was going to talk about a curriculum thing, but I'm retracting that partially because of what Ms. Parker said. We'll try to keep it streamlined. But to the point of what you're doing here tonight and what you do every day, been down this road in tough times, and I appreciate what you're doing. Want to encourage you to just keep working at that end. And I think at some point in time, that whole knowledge of what people have, what they're looking for, and to the point of the percentage of increase. I think I saw some stuff that was real helpful this last year, but just for my sake, a house that's worth $385,000 on the Zillow page is really only a taxable income of $135,000. Mr. Chambers, the money we're talking about taxable, that is based on the taxable amount, or is that based on the market value?
That's based on the auditor's total value, which is closer to the market value.
Okay, so it is the higher value.
Yes.
Okay, I was misinformed on that, and I thought that would help. But at any rate, thank you all for what you're doing. And when it comes time, to go forward, it's you got to engage like there's no tomorrow. And I remember we did that a while back, and it's not always easy. But this fall, you're going to have a lot of voters to work with, so you got to get them the right message. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jim Smeagol.
Jim Smeagol, 3183 Central Park Lane. I'm also a member of the Athletic Boosters. I appreciate you letting me speak here today. I just wanted to add a little bit of information. I do want to talk about the pay to play. But with the athletic department, one thing to remember is that we're asking the parents of these student athletes to double the fees that they're paying. And a lot of those parents are already participating in a lot of fundraising activities for our student athletes and our programs. For instance, I'm involved with the baseball program, and a lot of the equipment, if you go down to that field, is all sponsored by the parents who did fundraising to make that happen. And that's general equipment that those kids need to play that sport. So I'd really encourage you to, please don't take away from the athletic department, the athletic programs. It really means a lot to these kids. As we heard earlier today, these kids, when they go out in the world, their life experiences with athletics is huge. And by doubling that pay to play, you're going to have some of those kids who may not get in a game decide that they're not going to participate because they have to pay $660 to play a sport. But they would have been involved in an organization, a group, and a community. And that experience, if they miss out on that because they can't pay for that, I think that's disappointing. So really, please take that under consideration. One of the other things, one of the notes, and I'm not sure that I heard it correctly, but I do realize that that money goes into the general fund. It doesn't necessarily pay for the athletic budget. But one of the things I thought I heard earlier was, let's say it's, just to use a figure, $300,000 that gets added to the funding that comes in, that could add 6 teachers. Well, you're asking the student athletes, parents, to pay for additional teachers. What about bringing coaches back or putting it towards the athletics and figuring out another way to get those 6 teachers back, some other funding? So I appreciate you listening to what I had to say. I just wanted to throw a couple of things out there for you to consider. And like what Emily said, I do want to be a participant in the future conversations. So I don't have Facebook personally. I know that's one of the ways that we communicate, but whatever we could do to help get that word out when these meetings are happening so people like us can participate, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Krista Riffle?
Hello. My name's Krista Riffle, 6346 Mulberry Bend Drive, and I am a parent of 3 in the school district. I thank you guys too. I would not want your job, first and foremost. And I thank you for you guys for trying to help the students. My biggest concern and just thought process is that there's so many extracurricular. And as soon as we heard the 660, like Amy said, when 660 came out, the parents were talking. I mean, all my kids are sports, so it directly affects me, and that's where my opinion comes from, only my opinion. But in talking to people, I'm in the schools, I sell shirts for the boosters, I do all this, I'm there helping. There are so many extracurricular, and it is kind of a slap in the face when sports has doubled and nothing else is doubled. I just, fair's not a word, right, in our language anymore, and I get that. But there becomes a point where it's like, wait a second, sports is bringing in so much money. That's our main money maker in a lot of these instances, and we're hurting it. What about robotics? What about these other extracurricular that we're taking teachers that we're paying, just like our coaches? They're still getting paid. What about these? Why? I hate to have to charge anybody anything more. I don't want to pay it. I mean, I will because I want my kids to have the opportunity and the experience and all that. But I feel like we're never going to do apples to apples by saying, okay, this sport doesn't do as much as this sport or this sport, because everything's different. In track, you have kids that don't go to every meet. In football, you have kids that don't play on the field. They're on the sidelines. How can you tell one of them you're going to pay a full amount, but you're not going to go? But because the program does this, you're going to pay it. If we're looking at apples to apples, we need to look at all extracurricular. What are they? Who is running them? It's not parents, typically. We know that. Trying to get help is hard. We're paying teachers. That costs money. So, I mean, and like I said, I can't say it enough. I don't want to charge everybody money, but if we're looking at apples to apples and we really need to help this, fund this, we have to be in a position where everybody is doing their part, not just the sports, and the band or the music. I mean, 50-50, 40-60, whatever it is, the bottom line is that's what it falls on. And there is so much more in our schools than those two programs. So I just hope that you guys really look at that and think about that really hard, because the sports, the arts is a big deal, and I'd hate to see anybody lose out because of the money. So I thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Mia Woods.
Good evening. Maya Woods, 5764 Rosemont Way. And I am a proud alumni of Medina City Schools, and my 4 children have gone through the schools, and they have had all the opportunities that we are talking about today. And I just came up to say some of the things that have already been talked about as far as looking at some type of cap for these families. I have no more kids in the schools, but my friends' kids are in the schools. Me and my husband still come to the games and participate in a lot of things that go on here. And I guess my other question is also, I know in the past my kids were part of that first 660, and they did have, I'm speaking this because I work with families, and they did have something for the families that get reduced lunch and free lunch. And I just didn't know if that was something that has been talked about for those families, so that, you know, I can relay that. But I just want to say thank you, for all you are doing and for offering and looking at other suggestions for our community. And you're not just so strict on this is what we're doing and that's it. You are giving us that choice and suggestions, accepting our suggestions to take a look at another meeting. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And Jennifer Worthmuller.
Good evening. Jennifer Worthmuller, 1255 Dover Drive. I am a proud parent of 3 Medina Bees. 2 of my boys graduated from Medina. They both played, all 3 of my boys play on the soccer team. My 2 older boys who are attending college on soccer scholarships. It's very important to them that they had the opportunity to play here. I would hate to take that opportunity away from a child because they simply can't afford it. And my fear is, like this year on our soccer team, we had 14 seniors. Not all 14 of those seniors knew they were going to get minutes, but they wanted to be there with their team. They wanted to be there and get that experience this one last time. If you raise it to 660, those kids, they're not going to pay 660 to sit on the sideline. You've got kids on the football team that never touch the field. What parent is going to pay 660 for their kid to stand on the sideline Friday night? And you're taking away opportunities. You're also saying, oh, well, we can find scholarships. You got the boosters. Who's paying the booster dues? The parents of the kids who are playing these sports. You're going to ask me to pay $660 for my kid to play and then ask me to join the boosters? I don't have that extra money. So where's that money going to come from? It's just a very sad, sad state. I think let's look outside of the box. We have busing. You have teams that have a JV, varsity, and freshman team. We're sending 3 buses. Those buses aren't full. Why can't we put that team on one bus? You watch your freshman players play. You watch your JV players play. You support the team. We're one team, not 3. I know for soccer, hey, Buttercup, suck it up. You're going to be there for 3 hours. Support your team. You're not going to come home from school and take your nap before your game. You're going to be there. You're going to support your team. You're a JV player. What's your next step? Play varsity. If you're not there supporting your team, how are you going to learn the program? How are you going to support that team? You're there, you're watching. We could reduce bus fees by combining that transportation. I mean, can we think, I'm just asking, think outside the box. What are ways we can reduce these fees so we're not putting it back on the kids and taking away from our kids? They get one shot at this, one shot. My kids, their experience here was amazing. I don't want to see that taken away from any other kids simply because their family didn't have the means to do it. We got a lot of people in this city that support us, support our players. I'm at the football games. I'm at the soccer games. We're going to see reduced people in those stands when their kids aren't there because it's not just the parents that are there. It's family members, it's neighbors, it's friends that are there watching all these kids. Thank you for the time, and I appreciate everything you do.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who did not register who would like to speak at this time? Okay, all right. So then I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to consider the appointment, employment, or compensation of a public employee or official, discussion with the board's legal counsel of disputes involving the board that are the subject of pending or imminent court action. Can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion to move to executive session.
I'll do a second then.
Okay. Mr. Chambers?
Yes, Mr. West?
Yes.
Mr. Nichols?
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Ms. Smear?
Hi.
Ms. Pritchard?
Aye.
Thank you.
There obviously will be no action taken after we come out of executive session. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming. We appreciate it. We have a meeting in May, same place, and it'll be at 5:30. So thank you.